A black woman walked into a police station claiming harassment, only to be met with dismissive laughter from the officers. What they didn't know was that she had recorded everything on her own body cam. The footage revealed something that stunned everyone. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video and comment on where you're watching from. Let's get started. Maya Johnson's heart pounded against her ribs as the blue and red lights flashed in her rearview mirror. Her palms grew sweaty against the steering wheel as she carefully pulled over to the side of the deserted county road, the darkness of the rural Georgia night pressing in around her car. "Not again," she whispered, her hand moving instinctively to the small camera clipped to her blouse. She'd started wearing it 6 months ago after the third random traffic stop in as many weeks. As a black woman driving in Crestwood County, Maya had learned that nothing was truly random. She watched in her mirror as the officer approached, his hand resting casually on his holstered weapon. Officer Reed Simmons. She recognized him immediately. This would be their fourth encounter. "License and registration," he said, not bothering with a greeting. His flashlight beam hit her directly in the eyes, making her squint and turn away. "Officer Simmons," Maya said calmly, "may I ask why you've pulled me over? I was going exactly 3 miles under the speed limit, and all my lights are working properly." She kept her hands visible on the steering wheel, a habit born from necessity and fear. The officer's mouth twitched slightly. "You crossed the center line back there. Have you been drinking tonight, Ms. Johnson?" "No, I have not, and I did not cross the center line." Maya's voice remained steady despite her racing pulse. "Is your body camera on, Officer Simmons?" A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. "My equipment is functioning fine. License and registration, please." Maya slowly reached for her glove compartment, hyper-aware of his eyes tracking her every movement. As she handed over her documents, she spoke clearly. "I'd like to note that this is the 4th time you've pulled me over in 2 months. Always on this same stretch of road, always when there are no witnesses around." Officer Simmons ignored her comment, studying her license with exaggerated care. "Where are you coming from at this hour, Miss Johnson?" "I'm returning from my shift at Memorial Hospital. I'm a nurse there." Maya had explained this during each previous encounter, but Simmons asked every time as if it were brand new information. "And where are you headed?" "Home, officer. To my apartment in Crestwood Heights, the same place I've lived for the past 3 years." He handed her license back and leaned down, bringing his face uncomfortably close to the window. "You know, most people show a little more respect when talking to law enforcement. Makes things go a lot smoother." His tone was conversational, but the threat beneath it was unmistakable. "I'm being perfectly respectful," Maya replied. "I simply asked why I was pulled over and noted a pattern of stops that seems targeted." Officer Simmons straightened up, his hand returning to rest on his weapon. "Step out of the vehicle, please." "May I ask why?" "I smell alcohol. Step out of the vehicle now." Maya's stomach knotted. She knew she hadn't been drinking, not a drop. But she also knew that arguing would only escalate the situation. With deliberate slowness, she unbuckled her seatbelt and opened the door. The night air was cool against her skin as she stood on the empty road. Her camera was still recording, capturing every word, every movement. "I'm going to perform a field sobriety test," Simmons announced, loud enough that his own body camera would pick it up clearly. "Officer Simmons, I'm not intoxicated. I just finished a 12-hour shift saving lives. I haven't consumed any alcohol." He ignored her protests, ordering her through a series of tests, walking a straight line, touching her nose, following his finger with her eyes. Maya complied with each demand, her nurse's training keeping her movements precise despite her fraying nerves. "Now I'm going to need to search your vehicle," he declared after she'd completed the tests without a single mistake. "I do not consent to a search," Maya stated firmly. I've passed your sobriety test. There's no probable cause. Simmons stepped closer, towering over her. Are you hiding something, Ms. Johnson? Because your reluctance suggests to me that you might be. I'm not hiding anything. I'm exercising my Fourth Amendment rights. Unless you have a warrant or probable cause, you cannot search my vehicle. His radio crackled, and a voice announced a disturbance at a local bar. Simmons hesitated, clearly torn between continuing to harass Maya and responding to a call that would have witnesses. You're free to go, he finally said, his voice tight with irritation. But consider this a warning. These roads can be dangerous at night for people who don't follow the rules. Maya waited until he had returned to his patrol car before getting back into her own vehicle. She sat still, hands trembling slightly, as she watched him make a U-turn and drive away. Only when his taillights had disappeared around a bend did she allow herself to exhale. Got you, she whispered, pressing the button to stop the recording on her camera. She had documented everything: the baseless stop, the sobriety test she had passed flawlessly, the thinly veiled threat at the end. It was all there, irrefutable evidence to add to her growing collection. For months, Maya had endured these stops. At first, she had tried reporting them through proper channels. She had filed complaints with the Crestwood Police Department, carefully documenting each encounter. The response had been dismissive at best. The internal affairs officer had actually chuckled when she described the pattern of harassment. Officer Simmons is one of our most decorated officers, Captain Walsh had told her, barely glancing at her written statement. He doesn't target citizens. He's just thorough. Perhaps you should examine your own driving habits. That dismissal had been the final straw. If the system wouldn't protect her, Maya would protect herself. She had invested in the body camera the very next day. Small, discreet, but powerful enough to capture high-quality video and audio. Tonight had been the fourth documented incident. 4 stops, 0 citations. 4 instances of intimidation with no legitimate law enforcement purpose. 4 pieces of evidence that, taken together, told a compelling story of harassment and abuse of power. Maya drove home carefully, her mind racing with plans. Tomorrow she would download the footage, back it up in multiple locations, and add it to her case file. She wasn't just collecting evidence for herself anymore. After connecting with other residents through a community Facebook group, she had discovered that Simmons had a pattern of targeting black drivers, particularly women traveling alone. As she pulled into her apartment complex parking lot, Maya's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Layla Washington, another woman who had experienced similar stops. How'd the late shift go? Get home safe? The message read, their code for asking if she'd been pulled over again. Just adding to our collection, Maya texted back. Meeting still on for tomorrow? Absolutely. 2 p.m. at Thad's office. He says we might have enough now. Thaddeus Monroe was a civil rights attorney who had agreed to review their evidence. Maya had been hesitant to involve a lawyer at first, worried about potential retaliation. But after the 3rd stop, she realized this wasn't just about her safety anymore. It was about justice for everyone in Crestwood County who had faced similar treatment. Inside her apartment, Maya carefully removed the camera from her blouse and connected it to her laptop. As the footage downloaded, she opened a spreadsheet where she tracked every detail of these encounters: time, location, duration, questions asked, tests performed. The pattern was undeniable, and now it was all documented. Tomorrow would mark a turning point. Either the Crestwood Police Department would take their evidence seriously, or Thaddeus would file a civil rights lawsuit that would force them to pay attention. Either way, Officer Reed Simmons would finally face consequences for his actions. Maya closed her laptop and headed to the shower, eager to wash away the tension of the evening. As the hot water cascaded over her tired muscles, she allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. letting a few tears mix with the spray. The constant vigilance was exhausting, always watching her speedometer, checking her turn signals, documenting every interaction. But she wouldn't stop. She couldn't stop. Not when she knew that other women like her were experiencing the same treatment, the same fear, the same injustice. Tomorrow things would change. Tomorrow they would make someone listen. The law office of Monroe and Associates occupied a modest storefront on Crestwood's Main Street. Maya arrived 15 minutes early, a manila folder tucked under her arm containing printed screenshots from last night's encounter. As she pushed open the glass door, a small bell announced her arrival. Layla Washington was already there, seated in one of the reception area's worn leather chairs. The two women had never met in person before today. Their relationship built entirely through text messages and phone calls after connecting in a community Facebook group called Crestwood Accountability. Maya? Layla stood extending her hand. She was shorter than Maya had imagined, with bright eyes that conveyed both warmth and determination. "It's good to finally meet you," Maya said, shaking Layla's hand. "Though I wish it were under better circumstances." Before they could say more, the inner office door opened, and Thaddeus Monroe appeared. In his early 50s, with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had fought many battles in courtrooms and knew how to win them. "Ladies, please come in," he said, ushering them into a conference room where two other women were already seated. "I believe you've been in contact with Shanice Taylor and Vanessa Rodriguez online." Maya nodded in greeting as she took a seat at the rectangular table. The conference room walls were lined with framed newspaper articles highlighting civil rights victories, alongside photographs of Thaddeus with various community leaders and politicians. "Before we begin," Thaddeus said, settling into his chair at the head of the table, "I want to thank you all for your courage. What you're doing isn't easy, but it's necessary." He opened a laptop and turned it to face them. "I've reviewed the preliminary evidence you've sent me, and I've got to say, it's compelling. But today I need to understand the full scope of what we're dealing with." For the next hour, each woman shared her experiences. Layla had been stopped 6 times in 3 months by Officer Simmons, twice having her car searched without consent. Shanice described being ordered to step out of her vehicle and subjected to humiliating field sobriety tests, despite being visibly pregnant. Vanessa recounted how Simmons had followed her for over 10 miles before pulling her over for a dim license plate light that was functioning perfectly fine. When it was Maya's turn, she connected her laptop to the room's television monitor and played the footage from the previous night. "This is the 4th documented stop," she explained as they watched Officer Simmons approach her vehicle. "I've time-stamped each incident, noted the alleged violations, and tracked the duration of each stop." Thaddeus watched intently, occasionally jotting notes on a legal pad. When the video reached the part where Simmons suggested the roads could be dangerous at night for people who don't follow the rules, his pen paused mid-stroke. "That's a threat," he said quietly. Thinly veiled, but a threat nonetheless. Maya nodded. "That's how I interpreted it." When the footage ended, Thaddeus leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "We have enough to file a formal complaint with evidence that can't be easily dismissed. The pattern is clear, and these bodycam recordings are damning." "We tried complaints," Shanice interjected, one hand resting protectively on her rounded belly. "I filed 3 separate reports with Internal Affairs. They just get filed away." "Not this time," Thaddeus assured her. "Not with this level of documentation and not with all of you standing together. There's strength in numbers and there's power in irrefutable evidence." "What exactly are you proposing?" Maya asked. "A formal complaint to start, filed simultaneously with the Crestwood Police Department, the County Commissioner's Office, and the State Attorney General. We'll include all your evidence, videos, timestamps, witness statements, everything. We'll request an immediate investigation into Officer Simmons and potentially others who may be engaging in similar conduct. And if they ignore us again? Layla's voice carried the weariness of someone who had seen the system fail too many times. Then we escalate, Thaddeus replied. Civil rights lawsuit, media involvement, community protests. But let's start by giving the system a chance to correct itself. Maya exchanged glances with the other women. They had all been failed by this same system, but Thaddeus's confidence was reassuring. How soon can we file? She asked. I can have everything prepared by tomorrow morning. I suggest we deliver the complaints in person, all of us together. There's nothing quite like looking someone in the eye when you're demanding justice. The meeting concluded with a plan. They would meet at the police station at 9 a.m. the following day to file their formal complaint with Captain Walsh, the same man who had dismissed Maya's earlier reports. As they gathered their belongings, Vanessa approached Maya privately. That camera was a smart investment, she said, nodding toward the device clipped to Maya's purse. Where did you get it? Online. I can send you the link, Maya replied. Though hopefully after tomorrow, none of us will need them anymore. The women parted ways outside the law office, each carrying a renewed sense of purpose. Maya headed straight to her apartment, where she spent the evening organizing her evidence and preparing mentally for the confrontation to come. Morning arrived with a text from Thaddeus. Complaint finalized. See you at 9. Stay strong. Maya dressed carefully in professional attire, a navy blue blazer over a white blouse, paired with matching slacks. She wanted to project confidence and credibility. The Bodycam, as always, was clipped to her clothing, ready to record. The Crestwood Police Department headquarters was a squat brick building downtown, American and state flags fluttering outside. Maya arrived to find the others already gathered on the front steps, Thaddeus at the center holding a thick binder of documents. Everyone ready? He asked as Maya joined them. 4 determined nods answered him. Inside, the front desk officer regarded their group with suspicion. Can I help you? She asked, eyes lingering on Thaddeus's binder. We're here to see Captain Walsh, Thaddeus replied, his tone professional but firm, regarding a formal complaint. Do you have an appointment? This matter doesn't require one. Please inform Captain Walsh that attorney Thaddeus Monroe is here with 4 citizens filing a formal complaint regarding systematic harassment by one of his officers. The desk officer's expression tightened, but she picked up her phone and relayed the message. After a brief conversation, she hung up and pointed toward a row of chairs against the wall. He'll be with you shortly. 20 minutes passed before Captain Walsh emerged from the back offices, his broad frame filling the doorway. He was a large man with a florid face and thinning hair, his uniform pressed to perfection. Mr. Monroe, he said, deliberately avoiding the title, attorney. What brings you and these ladies to my department today? Thaddeus stepped forward. Captain Walsh, we're here to file a formal complaint against Officer Reed Simmons for a pattern of racially motivated traffic stops and harassment. Walsh's expression didn't change, but something hardened in his eyes. That's a serious accusation. I assume you have something more than just complaints this time? His gaze flicked dismissively toward Maya, recognition dawning in his eyes. We have extensive documentation, Thaddeus confirmed, holding up the binder, including video evidence from multiple incidents involving each of these women. Video evidence? Now Walsh looked genuinely surprised. Body camera footage, Maya explained, touching the small device on her blazer. Since Officer Simmons's own camera footage never seemed to make it into my previous complaints, I started recording our interactions myself. A muscle twitched in Walsh's jaw. Let's continue this in my office, he said after a moment, turning abruptly and expecting them to follow. As they walked through the bullpen area toward the captain's office, Maya noticed several officers watching their progress with open curiosity. Officer Simmons was among them, leaning against a desk in conversation with two colleagues. When he spotted Maya, his easy smile faltered. Captain Walsh's office was spartanly furnished, with just enough chairs for their group. He settled behind his desk, leather chair creaking under his weight, and extended his hand for the binder. "Let's see what you've got." Thaddeus placed the binder on the desk, but didn't immediately release it. "Before we proceed, Captain, I want to be clear. This complaint is being filed simultaneously with the County Commissioner and the State Attorney General. We're giving you the professional courtesy of addressing this internally first, but we are prepared to pursue all available legal remedies if necessary." Walsh's face reddened slightly, but he nodded. "Understood. Now show me this alleged evidence." As Thaddeus opened the binder and began presenting their case, Maya glanced through the office's glass partition. Officer Simmons was still watching, his expression now a mixture of confusion and concern. For the first time in months, Maya felt a shift in the balance of power. Today, she wasn't just a target. She was a witness, an advocate, and a force for change. Whatever happened next, things in Crestwood County would never be quite the same again. Captain Walsh reviewed the evidence with practiced indifference, flipping through the meticulously organized pages of testimonies, screenshots, and transcripts. His expression remained carefully neutral, but Maya noticed the slight tightening of his jaw as he scanned the data compiled from all four women's experiences. "You've been busy," he finally said, looking up at Thaddeus. "But correlation doesn't imply causation. Officer Simmons makes dozens of traffic stops every week. The fact that he's encountered these women multiple times could be simple coincidence." "With respect, Captain," Thaddeus replied, "when four women of color are repeatedly stopped without citation while following all traffic laws, coincidence becomes statistically improbable." Walsh closed the binder. "Statistics don't account for officer discretion. Simmons is one of our most proactive patrollers. He's got good instincts." "Then perhaps you should review the video evidence," Maya interjected, her patience wearing thin. Officer Simmons's good instincts led him to administer sobriety tests to a nurse coming off a 12-hour shift with no signs of impairment. Walsh shifted his attention to her, eyes narrowing. "Ms. Johnson, was it? I recall you filing complaints before. As I explained then, internal investigations found no wrongdoing." "Those investigations occurred without this evidence," Thaddeus pointed out, tapping the binder. "We're not asking you to take their word for it anymore. We've provided irrefutable proof of a pattern." Walsh leaned back in his chair, fingers drumming on his desk. Through the glass partition, Maya could see that a small crowd of officers had gathered, pretending to work while stealing glances at the captain's office. Officer Simmons was now seated at his desk, clearly trying to appear busy but repeatedly looking their way. "I'll need time to review all this properly," Walsh finally said. "How much time?" Thaddeus asked. "Department protocol allows 30 days for internal investigation." Layla made a sound of disbelief. 30 days? So Officer Simmons gets to continue patrolling and harassing for another month while you review? Walsh's expression hardened. "That's standard procedure, ma'am." "Actually," Thaddeus interrupted smoothly, "state law requires immediate administrative reassignment of any officer under investigation for civil rights violations. Section 23.4 of the State Police Code is quite clear on this matter." A flicker of surprise crossed Walsh's face, quickly replaced by irritation. "I'm familiar with the code, Counselor." "Then you know Officer Simmons should be placed on administrative duty effective immediately while this investigation proceeds," Thaddeus continued. "Unless you'd prefer I contact the State Attorney General today to discuss why Crestwood PD isn't following proper protocol?" The room fell silent. Maya watched the internal struggle play out on Walsh's face, his desire to protect his officer warring with the legal reality Thaddeus had presented. "Fine," Walsh finally said. I'll reassign Simmons to desk duty pending investigation. But I want to be clear. This department stands behind its officers. If this turns out to be nothing but a fishing expedition, it's not, Maya said firmly. And there's something else you should know, Captain. These videos aren't the only copies. Everything has been backed up to secure cloud storage and shared with trusted third parties. If anything happens to any of us, or if this evidence mysteriously disappears, it will immediately be made public. Walsh's face flushed dark red. Is that a threat, Ms. Johnson? No, sir. Just ensuring transparency. A knock at the office door interrupted the tense exchange. Walsh barked out a, "Come in," and the door opened to reveal a young officer, Santos, according to his nameplate, holding a folder. Sorry to interrupt, Captain, but you asked for these reports ASAP. Officer Santos's eyes swept curiously over the group before returning to his superior. Walsh took the folder with a grunt of acknowledgement, and Santos withdrew, closing the door behind him. We'll expect regular updates on the investigation, Thaddeus said, returning to the matter at hand. And to be clear, if we don't see appropriate action within the 30-day window, we'll proceed with formal legal action and media involvement. Understood, Walsh replied tersely. Is there anything else? Yes, Thaddeus said, producing another document from his briefcase. We're also filing a formal request under the Freedom of Information Act for all body camera footage, dash cam recordings, and dispatch logs related to Officer Simmons's traffic stops for the past 12 months. We'd like to determine whether this pattern extends beyond these 4 women. Walsh took the document, his expression darkening further. You'll receive whatever the law entitles you to, Mr. Monroe. Thank you, Captain, Thaddeus replied with professional courtesy that didn't quite mask his determination. We appreciate your cooperation. As they gathered their belongings to leave, Walsh addressed Maya directly. Ms. Johnson, a word of advice. Wearing unauthorized recording devices while interacting with law enforcement could be considered interference with police duties. Before Maya could respond, Thaddeus stepped in. Actually, Captain, the state Supreme Court ruled in Martinez v. Westlake 2 years ago that citizens have the right to record interactions with police officers as long as they don't physically impede the officer's work. Ms. Johnson's body camera is perfectly legal, as I'm sure you're aware. Walsh's only response was a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. They exited the office into the now quiet bullpen, where officers pretended to focus on their work while stealing glances at the group. As they passed Officer Simmons's desk, Maya met his gaze directly for the first time. Gone was the arrogant authority he'd displayed during their traffic stops. In its place was uncertainty, perhaps even worry. Outside in the parking lot, Thaddeus turned to the group. That went about as I expected. Walsh won't make this easy, but he knows he's cornered. Simmons will be off the streets, at least temporarily. What happens now? Shanice asked, one hand supporting her lower back as she stood in the morning sun. Now we wait, but not passively, Thaddeus replied. I'll monitor the investigation's progress, file additional requests if necessary, and keep pressure on the department. Meanwhile, I suggest you all continue to document any interactions with Crestwood PD, no matter how minor. What about the FOIA request? Vanessa asked. Those records could show this goes beyond just us. It might take weeks to get those records, and they'll likely come heavily redacted, Thaddeus admitted, but we'll work with what we get. As the group began to disperse, Officer Santos emerged from the station and approached them hesitantly. Excuse me, he said, looking around nervously. Ms. Johnson, could I speak with you for a moment? Maya glanced at Thaddeus, who gave a subtle nod and stepped slightly closer to her, close enough to intervene if necessary, but giving them space to talk. What is it, Officer Santos? Maya asked cautiously. The young officer lowered his voice. Look, I can't be seen talking to you for long. But I wanted you to know. Not everyone in the department thinks like Walsh and Simmons." Maya studied him, searching for any sign of deception. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying some of us have noticed the same patterns you're reporting," Santos replied, glancing back at the station doors. "There are good cops here who want to do the right thing. Just keep pushing, and be careful." Before she could ask more questions, Santos nodded politely and walked briskly back toward the station. "What was that about?" Layla asked, joining Maya. "I think we might have an ally on the inside," Maya replied thoughtfully. As they walked to their cars, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. The Bodycam footage hadn't just documented her own harassment, it had opened a door to potential change. Captain Walsh might resist, Officer Simmons might deny, but the evidence couldn't be ignored or explained away. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Thaddeus. "Good work today. Stay vigilant. This is just the beginning." Maya clipped her Bodycam to her car's visor before starting the engine. Whatever happened next, she would continue to document everything. The truth was her strongest weapon, and she intended to use it. Word of their formal complaint spread through Crestwood County like wildfire. By evening, Maya's phone was buzzing constantly with notifications from the community Facebook group, where membership had doubled in just hours. People were sharing their own stories of encounters with Officer Simmons and other Crestwood police officers, creating a virtual map of harassment that extended far beyond the 4 women who had filed the initial complaint. 3 days after their meeting with Captain Walsh, Maya stopped at Garcia's grocery on her way home from work. As she pushed her cart through the produce section, she noticed people watching her, some nodding in recognition, others quickly looking away when she met their eyes. "You're the nurse, right?" A voice beside her made Maya turn. An elderly black woman with silver hair stood examining a bunch of collard greens. "The one who's taking on the police." "I'm just trying to hold one officer accountable," Maya replied carefully. The woman smiled, deep lines creasing around her eyes. "About time somebody did. My grandson got stopped 3 times last month, and that boy drives like he's taking his road test every day." She patted Maya's arm. "You be careful though, honey. They don't like being challenged." As if to underscore the woman's warning, Maya noticed Officer Peterson, one of Simmons's closest colleagues at the department, turning into her aisle. He made a show of selecting a container of strawberries, all while keeping Maya in his peripheral vision. Maya continued shopping, hyper-aware of Peterson's presence as he followed her through 2 more aisles before finally approaching. "Ms. Johnson," he said, his tone cordial but his eyes cold. "Fancy meeting you here." "Officer Peterson," she acknowledged with a nod. He leaned against his empty cart. "You've caused quite a stir at the station. Officer Simmons is pretty upset about these accusations." "They're not accusations. They're documented incidents." Peterson's smile tightened. "Well, that's for the investigation to determine, isn't it? I just hope you understand what you're doing. Police work is complicated. Split-second decisions, dangerous situations. Civilians don't always see the whole picture." "Is there something I can help you with, officer?" Maya asked, keeping her voice steady despite her racing pulse. "Just picking up a few things," he replied, gesturing to his nearly empty cart. "Same as you. Crestwood's a small town. We're bound to run into each other." The implied threat lingered between them. "You drive safe now, Ms. Johnson. These roads can be tricky." Maya watched him walk away, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for her phone. She texted Thaddeus. "Officer Peterson just coincidentally ran into me at Garcia's grocery. Implied threat about driving safely." Thaddeus's response came quickly. "Document everything. Time, location, exact words. We'll add it to the file. Want me to meet you somewhere?" "No, I'm fine. Heading home after checkout." Maya completed her shopping and loaded the groceries into her car, constantly scanning the parking lot for any sign of Peterson or other officers. Her body camera remained active, clipped to her blouse. Back at her apartment, Maya was adding the Peterson encounter to her documentation spreadsheet when her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Ms. Johnson, this is Officer Santos." The young officer's voice was hushed. "Sorry to call out of the blue. I got your number from the complaint form." Maya sat up straighter. "What can I do for you, Officer Santos?" "I don't have much time," he said, still speaking quietly. "But I thought you should know. They're trying to discredit you. Captain Walsh has ordered a deep background check on you and the other women. They're looking for anything they can use. Parking tickets, credit history, social media posts, old boyfriends, everything." "That's harassment," Maya said, anger flaring. "It's technically part of the investigation," Santos replied, "but it's clearly meant to intimidate. And there's more. They're planning to challenge the body cam footage, claiming it could have been edited or manipulated." Maya's mind raced. The timestamps and metadata would disprove that. "They're counting on most people not understanding the technical aspects," Santos explained. "It's about creating doubt in the public eye." "Why are you telling me this?" Maya asked. "You're risking your job." There was a brief silence on the line. "Because I became a cop to help people, not harass them. What Simmons does, what Walsh allows, it's not right." He paused. "I have to go. Be careful what you say on the phone. Some of the guys have connections at the phone company." The line went dead before Maya could respond. She immediately texted Thaddeus to arrange a meeting, keeping the message vague. The next morning, Maya met Thaddeus, Layla, Shanice, and Vanessa at a coffee shop 2 towns over, where they were unlikely to be recognized. "They're trying to build counter-narratives," Thaddeus said after Maya relayed Santos's warning. "It's a common tactic. They can't fight the evidence directly, so they'll try to undermine your credibility." "What can we do?" Shanice asked, absently rubbing her pregnant belly. "Stay above reproach. Be meticulous with documentation, and prepare for things to get worse before they get better." Thaddeus looked at each woman in turn. "They're scared, which means we're making progress." "I received a partial response to our FOIA request," he continued, sliding a thick envelope onto the table. "Most of it's heavily redacted, but there's some useful information. Officer Simmons conducted 157 traffic stops in the past 6 months. Of those, 118 involved minority drivers. That's 75% in a county that's only 32% non-white." "That's damning," Vanessa said. "It would be if we had details on all those stops," Thaddeus replied. "Unfortunately, the department is claiming that releasing the full records would compromise ongoing investigations. We'll keep pushing, but it could take months of legal battles." "Meanwhile, Simmons is on desk duty," Layla pointed out. "That's something." "Yes, but we need to be prepared for escalation," Thaddeus warned. "The department will protect its own. They might not be able to stop the investigation, but they can make your lives difficult in other ways." As if on cue, Maya's phone buzzed with a notification from her apartment complex's management app. "Urgent. Mandatory unit inspection tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Police presence expected due to recent reports of illegal activity in the building." She showed it to the others. "This is no coincidence. I've lived there 3 years without a single mandatory inspection." "They're sending a message," Thaddeus said grimly. "But it's also a sign of desperation. Document everything. If they plant anything in your apartment, we'll add witness intimidation to our case." Later that day, Maya's supervisor at Memorial Hospital called her into his office. "Is everything okay, Maya?" Dr. Patel asked, concern evident in his voice. "I received a call from the Crestwood Police Department asking about your work schedule and performance history." Maya's stomach tightened. "What did you tell them?" The truth, that you're one of our best nurses with an impeccable record. Dr. Patel leaned forward. Maya, what's going on? Is there something I should know? She hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. I've filed a formal complaint against an officer who's been targeting me and other women of color for harassment during traffic stops. The department is now trying to discredit me. Dr. Patel nodded slowly. I suspected it might be something like that. Don't worry about your job. You have the hospital's full support. If they contact us again, I'll direct them to our legal department. Thank you, Maya said, relief washing over her. Just be careful, he advised. Small-town police departments can wield a lot of power. That evening, as Maya drove home, she noticed a patrol car parked near her apartment complex entrance. It wasn't Simmons, he was on desk duty, but she recognized Officer Peterson behind the wheel. He made no move to stop her, simply watching as she drove past. The message was clear. We're watching you. Inside her apartment, Maya double-checked that her windows and door were securely locked. She transferred the day's Bodycam footage to her laptop, backed it up to multiple secure locations, and updated her documentation spreadsheet with every detail of the day's events. Her phone chimed with a message from Layla. Peterson drove past my house 3 times tonight. Obvious patrol pattern. Similar messages followed from Shanice and Vanessa. The intimidation was systematic and coordinated. Maya stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror as she prepared for bed. The woman looking back at her appeared tired but resolute. 6 months ago, she might have backed down, might have decided the fight wasn't worth the stress. But now, with each act of intimidation, her determination only grew stronger. They were afraid of her Bodycam footage, afraid of the truth it revealed. And that fear told her everything she needed to know about the power she held in her hands. 2 weeks into the investigation, Maya stood in the back of the Crestwood Community Center, watching as the monthly town council meeting descended into chaos. What had begun as a routine civic gathering had transformed into a heated forum about policing in Crestwood County after several community members raised concerns about Officer Simmons and the pending investigation. I've lived in this town for 43 years, an elderly white man was saying, his voice amplified by the microphone, and I've never had a problem with our police. This sounds like a witch hunt to me. Scattered applause followed his statement, primarily from the front rows where several off-duty officers and their families sat. Maya noticed Captain Walsh among them, arms crossed, a satisfied expression on his face. My 17-year-old son was stopped 3 times in 1 month, a black woman countered, standing from her seat. 3 times with no citations issued, just harassment. This isn't about attacking the police. It's about holding individuals accountable. The room erupted in overlapping voices, some supportive, others dismissive. Mayor Franklin, a silver-haired man with the harried look of someone who'd rather be anywhere else, banged his gavel repeatedly. Please, everyone, this isn't on tonight's agenda. There's an ongoing investigation, and the council can't comment on pending matters. When will the investigation conclude? Someone shouted from the crowd. That's up to the police department, the mayor replied, looking uncomfortable. Now, if we could return to the scheduled items. The department investigating itself is the problem, another voice called out. Maya felt a presence beside her and turned to find Thaddeus, who had slipped in through the side door. Quite a turnout, he murmured. Did you know this was going to happen? She asked. He shook his head. Not specifically, but it's not surprising. The community is divided and tensions are high. This was inevitable. As the meeting continued, with Mayor Franklin struggling to maintain order, Maya's phone vibrated with a text from Layla. Channel 12 van just pulled up outside. Moments later, a local news crew entered the community center, camera already rolling to capture the heated debate. The reporter, a young woman Maya recognized from the evening news, scanned the room before spotting Maya and Thaddeus in the back. She made a beeline toward them. "Ms. Johnson?" the reporter asked. "Alyssa Chen, Channel 12 News. Would you care to comment on the investigation into Officer Simmons? We understand you're one of the primary complainants." Before Maya could respond, Thaddeus stepped slightly forward. "Ms. Johnson is exercising her rights as a citizen to address systemic issues within local law enforcement. Beyond that, we have no comment while the investigation is ongoing." The reporter persisted. "Sources within the police department suggest the evidence provided may have been manipulated. How do you respond to those allegations?" Maya felt a surge of anger. This was exactly what Santos had warned them about, the department's strategy to discredit her evidence before the public even saw it. "The bodycam footage speaks for itself," Maya replied carefully. "Multiple incidents, multiple women, all documenting the same pattern of behavior. The metadata and timestamps are intact and verifiable by any independent expert." The camera light blinked red as the reporter pressed on. "Would you be willing to release the footage publicly?" "That would compromise the integrity of the ongoing investigation," Thaddeus interjected smoothly. "But rest assured, the evidence has been secured and authenticated. Any claims of manipulation are simply attempts to distract from the real issue, the systematic harassment of women of color by Officer Simmons." The reporter opened her mouth to ask another question when a commotion at the front of the room drew everyone's attention. A young black man had taken the microphone, his voice trembling with emotion. "My name is Marcus Williams. Last year, Officer Simmons pulled me over, claimed he smelled marijuana, and searched my car without consent. He found nothing, but while I was standing on the side of the road, he kept his hand on his weapon the entire time, like I was some kind of threat. I was wearing my hospital scrubs, coming home from my shift as a medical assistant." The room fell silent as Marcus continued. "I filed a complaint. Nothing happened. I requested the bodycam footage. They said it was corrupted. I'm here today because I heard other people are finally being listened to, and I want my experience on record too." Several other community members stood up, signaling their desire to share similar stories. Mayor Franklin looked increasingly distressed, while Captain Walsh's expression had darkened considerably. "This meeting is adjourned," the mayor announced, banging his gavel with finality. "Please submit any concerns in writing to the appropriate authorities." As the crowd began to disperse, some lingering to talk in heated clusters, Maya noticed Officer Peterson approaching her and Thaddeus, his face set in a grim expression. "Ms. Johnson, you're causing quite a disruption in our community," he said, just loud enough for nearby attendees to hear. "I'm not causing anything, Officer Peterson," Maya replied evenly. "I'm simply seeking accountability." "Careful," he said, leaning closer. "Stirring up public sentiment against the police can be considered incitement." Thaddeus stepped between them. "That's a serious mischaracterization of the First Amendment, officer. Ms. Johnson has every right to speak about her experiences and seek redress through proper channels, which is exactly what she's doing." Peterson's eyes narrowed. "Just make sure your proper channels don't include turning this town against its police force." He walked away, joining Captain Walsh near the exit. The Channel 12 reporter, who had witnessed the exchange, approached again. "Was that officer threatening you, Ms. Johnson?" Maya considered her response carefully. Officer Peterson expressed concern about community division. "I share that concern. No one wants division. We want accountability and equal treatment under the law." After the reporter moved on to interview other attendees, Thaddeus guided Maya toward the side exit. "That was well handled, but things are escalating faster than I anticipated." Outside, they found Marcus Williams waiting near Maya's car. "Ms. Johnson, I just wanted to thank you for what you're doing. After I filed my complaint last year, I felt so alone, like I was the only one experiencing this." "You're definitely not alone," Maya assured him. Would you be willing to add your testimony to our case file? It could strengthen the pattern we're establishing." Marcus nodded eagerly. "Absolutely. Whatever helps." As they exchanged contact information, Maya noticed a patrol car cruising slowly through the community center parking lot, a not-so-subtle reminder that they were being watched. The following morning, Maya awoke to find her story splashed across the front page of the Crestwood Gazette. Local nurse leads charge against police harassment. The article included quotes from the town meeting and mentioned the Bodycam footage, though it also included Captain Walsh's statement suggesting the investigation would likely find no wrongdoing. More disturbing was the sidebar article. Officer Simmons, decorated veteran with spotless record. The piece painted Simmons as a community hero, listing his commendations and charitable work, while dismissing the complaints as unsubstantiated accusations from a small group of individuals with possible political motivations. Maya's phone began ringing almost immediately. First Layla, then Shanice, then Vanessa. All had seen the article. All were concerned about the obvious bias. Then came a call from Officer Santos. "Be careful today," he warned without preamble. "The department's furious about last night's meeting and the news coverage. Walsh is saying you orchestrated the whole thing to trial by media Simmons before the investigation concludes." "I had nothing to do with what happened at that meeting," Maya protested. "Doesn't matter. They're looking for any excuse to discredit you." He paused. "And there's something else. I overheard Peterson and Simmons talking in the break room. Peterson mentioned something about your route to work, how predictable it is." A chill ran down Maya's spine. "You think they're planning something?" "I don't know," Santos admitted. "But maybe vary your routine for a while. Different routes, different times, just to be safe." After hanging up, Maya called Thaddeus to relay Santos's warning. His response was immediate and grave. "Document everything, stay in public spaces whenever possible, and keep that body cam running at all times. If they're desperate enough to consider direct intimidation, it means we're getting close to something they don't want found." For the next week, Maya varied her routes to and from the hospital, sometimes taking the interstate instead of county roads, other times driving through adjacent neighborhoods. She left for work at different times, asked colleagues to walk her to her car after late shifts, and kept her body cam active whenever she was in public. The constant vigilance was exhausting. Every patrol car made her pulse quicken. Every unexpected noise in her apartment sent adrenaline coursing through her veins. But beneath the fatigue and stress, her resolve remained unshaken. 20 days into the 30-day investigation period, Thaddeus called an emergency meeting at his office. When Maya arrived, she found not only Layla, Shanice, and Vanessa waiting, but also Marcus Williams and 3 other community members who had come forward with their own stories about Officer Simmons. "We've received partial results from our expanded FOIA request," Thaddeus announced without preamble, spreading documents across the conference table. "And Officer Santos has provided additional information that corroborates our case." "Is that legal?" Layla asked, concern evident in her voice. "Using information from Santos?" "He's officially become a whistleblower," Thaddeus explained. "He's filed his own report with Internal Affairs in the State Attorney General's office, documenting what he calls a culture of targeted harassment within the department." Maya's eyebrows rose in surprise. "That's a huge risk for him." "Yes, it is," Thaddeus agreed. "But it's also a game-changer for our case. Santos has provided dispatch logs showing that Simmons specifically requested to patrol certain areas at times when he knew minority residents would be commuting. He's also confirmed that several officers' body cameras have a pattern of malfunctioning during controversial stops." Thaddeus spread out more documents. These FOIA results, though heavily redacted, show something even more disturbing. Officer Simmons has had 27 formal complaints filed against him in his 8 years with the department. Every single one was dismissed without action. 27? Marcus echoed in disbelief. And here's where it gets interesting, Thaddeus continued, highlighting a section of the document. Captain Walsh personally handled 19 of those complaint reviews, despite department protocol calling for independent investigation. Maya leaned forward, studying the papers. So Walsh has been protecting Simmons all along. It appears so. The question is why. Thaddeus shuffled through more documents. Santos believes there's a deeper connection between them, possibly dating back to Walsh's days as a patrol officer. He's looking into it. As they discussed the implications of these revelations, Maya's phone buzzed with a news alert from the Crestwood Gazette. Whistleblower officer suspended, accused of evidence tampering. They're moving against Santos, Maya said, showing the others the headline. They must have figured out he's helping us. Thaddeus immediately made a call, speaking in low, urgent tones while the group waited anxiously. When he hung up, his expression was grim. They're claiming Santos accessed files without authorization and altered records. It's completely fabricated, but it gives them grounds to suspend him and discredit anything he provides to our case. Can they do that? Vanessa asked. They can try, Thaddeus replied. But Santos was smart. He documented everything and secured copies of all records before coming forward. And he's retained his own counsel, a former prosecutor who specializes in police misconduct cases. The meeting continued as they strategized their response to this new development. As Maya drove home afterward, taking yet another alternate route, she noticed a silver sedan that seemed to be following the same turns. Remembering Santos's warning, she made a sudden detour into a shopping center parking lot. The sedan drove past, but she caught a glimpse of the driver, not a police officer, but a middle-aged man in civilian clothes. Unnerved, Maya waited 15 minutes before continuing home, taking a circuitous route and checking frequently for any sign of the silver car. She saw no further evidence of being followed, but the incident left her on edge. That evening, a knock at her apartment door startled her. Through the peephole, she saw a uniformed delivery person holding a package. Her Bodycam already active, Maya opened the door cautiously. "Delivery for Maya Johnson," the young woman announced cheerfully, extending a medium-sized box. "I didn't order anything," Maya replied, not reaching for the package. The delivery person checked her electronic pad. "It says here it's from Thaddeus Monroe. Need to sign for it." Relieved but still cautious, Maya signed and accepted the package. Inside, she found a more sophisticated body camera than her current model, along with a note from Thaddeus. "Higher resolution, longer battery life, and automatic cloud backup. Use it immediately. Call me when you get this." When she called, Thaddeus explained that all 4 women were receiving upgraded equipment. "After what happened to Santos, we need to ensure our evidence is absolutely bulletproof. These cameras include GPS tracking and timestamp verification that can't be disputed." "Have you heard anything more about Santos?" Maya asked. "He's fighting the suspension, but it's an uphill battle. The department is closing ranks." Thaddeus paused. "There's something else you should know. The silver car you reported following you? I've received similar reports from Layla and Marcus. We believe the department has hired private investigators to track the complainants. Is that legal? It's a gray area. They'll claim it's part of their investigation, but it's clearly meant to intimidate. Document any further incidents, and don't confront them." The next morning, Maya arrived at Memorial Hospital to find Dr. Patel waiting for her at the staff entrance, his expression troubled. "Maya, I need to speak with you before your shift," he said, guiding her toward his office. Once inside with the door closed, he got straight to the point. "The police department has requested your complete employment file, including performance reviews, disciplinary actions, and patient complaints." "What? Why?" "They claim it's relevant to an ongoing investigation." Dr. Patel shook his head in disgust. "I've consulted our legal department. They can't compel us to provide this information without a court order, which they don't have. We're denying the request." Relief washed over Maya. "Thank you. Unfortunately, that's not the end of it." Dr. Patel sighed heavily. "Someone from the department called our chief of staff, suggesting that your personal crusade might be affecting patient care. They've implied that the hospital could face scrutiny if we continue to harbor someone creating community division." Maya felt as if the air had been sucked from the room. "They're threatening the hospital to get to me." "Essentially, yes." Dr. Patel leaned forward. "Maya, you have the hospital's full support. Your work is exemplary, and we won't be bullied. But you should be aware that they're escalating their tactics." Throughout her shift, Maya felt the weight of invisible eyes on her. Every interaction with patients, every conversation with colleagues, seemed suddenly fraught with potential consequences. Was someone watching, waiting for her to make a mistake they could exploit? When her shift ended, she found Thaddeus waiting in the hospital parking lot, leaning against his car. "I thought you might appreciate some company on your drive home," he said, noting her surprised expression. "Given recent developments." "That obvious, huh?" Maya attempted a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're at the center of something important," Thaddeus replied. "And powerful people are feeling threatened. That makes you vulnerable." He handed her a business card. "I've hired security for all the complainants. This company will do a sweep of your apartment for surveillance devices and provide a panic button that connects directly to their response team." "You think it's that serious?" Thaddeus's expression was solemn. "I think Walsh and Simmons have too much to lose if this investigation reveals the full extent of their misconduct. The closer we get to the truth, the more desperate they'll become." As Maya drove home, Thaddeus following in his car, she reflected on how quickly her life had changed. 6 months ago, she had been just another nurse, head down, trying to avoid trouble. Now she was at the center of a case that seemed to be exposing not just one officer's misconduct, but potentially years of systematic harassment enabled by department leadership. The bodycam clipped to her blouse felt heavier somehow, weighted with the responsibility it represented. What had begun as simple self-protection had evolved into something far more significant, evidence that could finally bring accountability to a system that had operated unchecked for too long. And if the increasingly desperate attempts to discredit her were any indication, that evidence was far more damaging than even she had initially realized. 25 days into the investigation, Maya received an encrypted email from Officer Santos. Despite his suspension, he had continued digging into the connection between Captain Walsh and Officer Simmons, working carefully to avoid detection. "Found something," the message read. "Walsh and Simmons worked together in Riverview PD before coming to Crestwood. Both transferred under unusual circumstances. Looking into why. Be careful with this information." Maya forwarded the email to Thaddeus, who responded almost immediately with a phone call. "This could be significant," he said. "I've got contacts in Riverview. I'll see what I can find out about their sudden departure." Later that day, while Maya was shopping for groceries, her phone rang with a call from Thaddeus. "I need you to come to my office right away," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "Don't tell anyone where you're going, and make sure you're not followed." Maya abandoned her half-filled cart and headed directly to her car, scanning the parking lot for any sign of surveillance. The drive to Thaddeus's office took longer than usual as she took deliberate detours and doubled back several times to ensure she wasn't being tailed. When she arrived, she found not only Thaddeus waiting but also a man she didn't recognize, silver-haired, with the weathered face of someone who had seen too much. "Maya, this is Chief Michael Reynolds, retired," Thaddeus introduced them. He was with the Riverview Police Department during the time Walsh and Simmons served there. Chief Reynolds nodded grimly. "Ms. Johnson, I've been following your case with great interest. What you're doing takes real courage." "Thank you, sir," Maya replied, settling into a chair. Thaddeus said you have information about Walsh and Simmons? The retired chief clasped his hands on the desk. 10 years ago, Walsh was a sergeant and Simmons a junior officer under his command in Riverview. There was an incident, a traffic stop gone wrong. The driver was a young black man named Darius Taylor, college student, athlete, no record. Reynolds paused, his expression darkening. According to the official report, Taylor became combative during the stop. Simmons claimed he saw a weapon, fired 3 shots. Taylor died at the scene. No weapon was ever found. Maya felt a chill run through her. But you don't believe the official report. The dashcam footage was corrupted, Reynolds continued. Simmons's body camera supposedly malfunctioned. The only witness was Walsh, who backed Simmons's story completely. You suspected a cover-up, Thaddeus prompted. Reynolds nodded. I was deputy chief then. I pushed for a thorough investigation, but the department closed ranks. Political pressure mounted to clear both officers quickly. The DA ruled the shooting justified based on the officer's testimony. But you kept digging, Maya guessed. I did, and I found inconsistencies. The angle of the bullet wounds didn't match Simmons's account. The supposed threatening movement would have been physically impossible given Taylor's position in the vehicle. Reynolds's face was grim. I was building a case to reopen the investigation when suddenly both Walsh and Simmons transferred to Crestwood. A month later, I was pushed into early retirement. The implications hung heavy in the air. So Walsh has been protecting Simmons because Simmons knows what really happened that night, Maya said slowly. They're bound by this cover-up. Exactly, Reynolds confirmed. And if your investigation exposes Simmons's pattern of misconduct, it could lead back to the Taylor case. The statute of limitations hasn't expired on potential charges if the shooting is ruled unjustified. Thaddeus leaned forward. Chief Reynolds has copies of his unofficial investigation notes. It's not conclusive evidence, but it establishes a pattern and a motive for Walsh's protection of Simmons. Will you testify about this if needed? Maya asked Reynolds. The retired chief nodded firmly. That's why I'm here. Taylor's family deserves justice, and so do all the people Simmons has harassed since then with Walsh's protection. Your body cam footage may be the key to unraveling the whole thing. After Reynolds departed, Thaddeus outlined their next steps. The 30-day investigation window closes in 5 days. Based on Santos's information and what we've learned today, I strongly suspect Walsh will try to bury this, claim insufficient evidence, and get Simmons back on patrol. So what do? We pressure the state attorney general to take over the case. With evidence of a potential cover-up involving a previous shooting, we can argue that Crestwood PD can't investigate itself impartially. As Maya left Thaddeus's office, she felt both hopeful and deeply unsettled. The stakes had risen dramatically. This was no longer just about traffic stops and harassment. A young man had died, and the truth had been buried for a decade. That night, unable to sleep, Maya reviewed all her body cam footage again, ensuring everything was properly backed up. Around midnight, her phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Parking garage, level 3, blue sedan, 20 minutes. Information about Walsh, Simmons. Maya hesitated, suspicion immediately flaring. The message could be from Santos or another insider, or it could be a trap. She tried calling Thaddeus, but the call went straight to voicemail. After a moment's deliberation, she forwarded the text to both Thaddeus and Layla with a message. Received this. Seems suspicious. If you don't hear from me by 12:45, call police to hospital parking garage. The hospital was only 5 minutes from her apartment. If this was legitimate information, it could be crucial to their case. But she wouldn't be reckless. Maya slipped her upgraded body cam into her pocket, activated it, and grabbed a small canister of pepper spray from her purse before heading out. The parking garage was eerily quiet at this hour. illuminated by flickering fluorescent lights that cast long shadows between the parked cars. Maya approached level 3 cautiously, staying close to the wall and scanning for the blue sedan mentioned in the text. She spotted it parked in a corner, an older model Ford with tinted windows. No one was visible inside or nearby. Maya remained at a distance, watching for any movement. "Hello?" she called out, her voice echoing slightly in the concrete structure. "I got your message." Silence answered her. The situation felt increasingly wrong. Maya began backing toward the stairwell, her pepper spray now in hand, when she heard the distinctive sound of a car engine starting, not from the blue sedan, but from somewhere behind her. She turned to see a dark SUV with its headlights off, rolling slowly toward her from the entrance ramp. The vehicle accelerated suddenly, forcing Maya to dive between two parked cars. The SUV screeched to a halt, blocking her exit path. The driver's door opened, and Officer Peterson stepped out, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "Ms. Johnson," he said calmly. "Out for a late-night drive?" Maya's hand closed around her body cam, ensuring it was recording. "Officer Peterson, this is an interesting coincidence." "No coincidence," he replied, moving closer. "We needed to have a private conversation, away from lawyers and witnesses." "We?" The passenger door opened, and Captain Walsh emerged, his bulk casting a long shadow across the concrete floor. "Ms. Johnson," Walsh said, his voice deceptively pleasant, "you've been causing quite a stir in our department." Maya kept her distance, positioning herself so both men remained in view. "What do you want, Captain?" "To offer you a deal." Walsh stepped forward. "Your complaint has raised concerns. While we believe Officer Simmons will be cleared of any significant wrongdoing, these investigations can be messy, time-consuming, and divisive for the community." "Get to the point," Maya said, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "Withdraw your complaint," Walsh stated flatly. "In exchange, we ensure you'll never be pulled over in Crestwood County again. Your record stays clean, your job remains secure, and everyone moves on." Maya almost laughed at the audacity. "And if I refuse?" Walsh shrugged, the gesture casual but the threat implicit. "Things get complicated. Evidence gets lost. Witnesses reconsider their statements. Your credibility comes into question. Officer Santos's career is already over. Do you really want to sacrifice yours too? For what? Some traffic stops?" "This isn't just about traffic stops," Maya replied. "It's about abuse of power, systematic harassment, and possibly much worse. I know about Darius Taylor." The change in Walsh's demeanor was immediate and chilling. His face hardened, and Peterson took a step closer. "You're treading into dangerous territory, Ms. Johnson," Walsh said, his voice low. "That case was closed years ago. Bringing it up now would be unwise." "Is that a threat, Captain?" "It's advice. From someone who knows how these things work." Walsh gestured around the empty parking garage. "No one else is here. No witnesses. Just 3 people having a conversation that never happened." Maya's fingers pressed the panic button on the device Thaddeus had given her. "Actually, Captain, this conversation is being recorded." She pulled out her body cam. "And I've already sent my location to multiple people who will contact authorities if I don't check in within the next few minutes." Walsh's face contorted with anger. "You think a little camera protects you? Evidence can disappear. Recordings can be corrupted. People can have accidents." "Like Darius Taylor?" Maya challenged. Before either man could respond, the sound of approaching sirens cut through the night air. Walsh and Peterson exchanged alarmed glances. "This isn't over," Walsh growled as they retreated to their SUV. "You have no idea what you're up against." As the vehicle sped away, Maya leaned against a concrete pillar, her legs suddenly weak with the release of tension. The Bodycam felt solid and reassuring in her hand, capturing every word, every threat, every admission that Walsh hadn't realized he was making. The approaching sirens grew louder, and Maya's phone lit up with calls from both Thaddeus and Layla. Tonight's confrontation had been dangerous, but it had also provided exactly what they needed: direct evidence of intimidation and obstruction from the highest levels of the Crestwood Police Department. Dawn was breaking as Maya sat in State Attorney General Eleanor Rivera's office, the parking garage footage playing on a large monitor. Thaddeus sat beside her, while two assistant attorneys general took detailed notes. Maya watched Rivera's expression grow increasingly grave as Walsh's threats echoed through the room. "You think a little camera protects you? Evidence can disappear. Recordings can be corrupted. People can have accidents." Rivera paused the playback. "And you're certain this wasn't edited or manipulated in any way?" "The device uploads directly to encrypted cloud storage," Thaddeus explained. "The metadata and timestamps are intact and verifiable. Multiple security measures prevent tampering." Rivera nodded, studying the frozen image of Walsh's angry face. "This goes far beyond harassment during traffic stops. We're looking at witness intimidation, obstruction of justice, and potentially conspiracy related to the Darius Taylor case." She turned to one of her assistants. "Get the Riverview case files, all of them, and put a call in to the FBI Civil Rights Division." Relief washed over Maya. Finally, someone with authority was taking this seriously. "What happens now?" she asked. "Effective immediately, my office is taking over the investigation," Rivera said decisively. "I'll be contacting the Crestwood County Commissioner to inform them that due to clear conflicts of interest, the police department can no longer investigate itself." "And Walsh and Peterson?" Thaddeus prompted. "Based on this footage alone, I have grounds to suspend them pending investigation." Rivera's expression was resolute. "Ms. Johnson, I want to commend your courage. Many people would have backed down in the face of such intimidation." Maya thought of Darius Taylor's family, still waiting for justice after 10 years. "I couldn't let them continue abusing their power, not when I had evidence of what they were doing." As they left the Attorney General's office, Thaddeus placed a protective hand on Maya's shoulder. "This is a significant victory, but things might get worse before they get better. Walsh and Peterson won't go quietly." "I know," Maya replied, "but at least now we're not fighting alone." By noon, the news had broken across local media. "State takes over Crestwood police investigation, captain and officer suspended." The headlines were accompanied by still images from Maya's Bodycam footage, Walsh's threatening posture clearly visible. Maya's phone buzzed constantly with messages of support from colleagues and community members. But there were also disturbing messages from anonymous numbers. Threats, insults, accusations that she was destroying good officers' lives. She forwarded these to Thaddeus, who added them to their growing file of evidence. That afternoon, Maya returned to her apartment to find the door slightly ajar. Her heart racing, she backed away immediately, calling both Thaddeus and the security company he had hired. Within minutes, private security arrived, followed shortly by state police officers dispatched by the Attorney General's office. The apartment had been thoroughly ransacked, drawers emptied, furniture overturned, electronics smashed. On her bedroom wall, someone had spray-painted "Snitch" in large red letters. "They were looking for something specific," observed the state police detective, carefully photographing the damage. "Likely your original recordings or backups." "They won't find them," Maya said, thinking of the secure cloud storage and the multiple encrypted backups Thaddeus had arranged. "Everything is stored off-site." Nevertheless, the invasion of her personal space left Maya shaken. The security company arranged for a hotel room while her apartment was processed for evidence, and Thaddeus insisted on hiring round-the-clock protection. "This is escalation," he explained grimly. "They're desperate now that the state has stepped in. We need to assume they'll try anything to discredit or silence you." That evening, as Maya settled into her hotel room under the watchful eye of a security guard posted in the hallway, her phone rang with a call from Layla. "Have you seen the news? Officer Simmons was just arrested." Layla's voice was breathless with excitement. "State police took him in for questioning about the Darius Taylor case. They've reopened the investigation." Maya switched on the television to find every local channel covering the story. Footage showed Simmons being escorted from his home in handcuffs, his face a mask of stunned disbelief. A breaking news banner scrolled across the bottom of the screen. "Multiple officers from Crestwood PD under investigation. Sources suggest pattern of misconduct dating back years." The next morning brought another development. Officer Santos had been reinstated, his suspension deemed retaliatory after the Attorney General's review. He immediately provided additional evidence, internal communications showing how Walsh had systematically protected Simmons and other officers accused of misconduct, particularly against minority residents. "This goes deeper than we thought," Thaddeus told Maya during their morning briefing call. "Santos says at least 5 other officers were part of what they informally called the Enforcement Squad, targeting specific neighborhoods and demographics for aggressive policing." "How could this happen for so long without consequences?" Maya asked, still processing the scope of the corruption being revealed. "It's the same in many small departments," Thaddeus explained. "Limited oversight, closed ranks, intimidated witnesses, and community members who feel powerless to challenge authority. Without your Bodycam footage providing irrefutable evidence, none of this would have come to light." As Maya prepared to check out of the hotel, her phone rang with an unknown number. Cautiously, she answered. "Ms. Johnson?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar and hesitant. "My name is Lydia Taylor. Darius was my son." Maya sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. "Mrs. Taylor, I don't know what to say." "The Attorney General's office contacted me," Lydia continued, her voice steadying. "They said your evidence might finally help us get justice for Darius. I wanted to thank you personally." "I only recently learned about your son's case," Maya said, emotion tightening her throat. "I'm so sorry for your loss. For 10 years they told me my boy was at fault." Lydia's voice broke slightly. "That he threatened an officer and got himself killed. I knew my son. He was gentle, respectful. He'd never threaten anyone. But no one would listen." "They're listening now," Maya assured her. "The Attorney General is reopening the case completely." "Because of you and your camera," Lydia said. "When you stand up to testify, I want you to know the Taylor family will be there supporting you. You're not alone in this fight anymore." After the call ended, Maya sat in silence for several minutes, overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility. What had begun as personal protection against harassment had evolved into something far greater, a potential catalyst for justice long denied. Her moment of reflection was interrupted by an urgent call from Thaddeus. "Maya, turn on the news right now." She fumbled for the remote, switching on the television to see Captain Walsh holding an impromptu press conference outside the police station, still wearing his uniform despite his suspension. "These allegations are a politically motivated witch hunt," Walsh was saying, his face flushed with indignation. "Officer Simmons and I have served this community with distinction for years. Ms. Johnson and her associates have manipulated evidence to paint a false narrative of departmental misconduct." The camera panned to show a group of supporters behind Walsh, many wearing police uniforms or back the blue t-shirts. Signs in the crowd read, "Support our officers," and "Maya Johnson, anti-police activist." "Furthermore," Walsh continued, "I have reason to believe the so-called evidence presented by Ms. Johnson has been doctored. We have experts analyzing the footage who have identified several inconsistencies suggesting digital manipulation." "That's a blatant lie," Maya said, outrage building as she watched. "The footage is authenticated and secured." "We know," Thaddeus replied. "But he's trying to turn public opinion. This is their last desperate play. Discredit the evidence and paint you as having a vendetta against police." On screen, a reporter asked Walsh about his suspension. His response was chilling. "This suspension is temporary and unfounded. When the truth comes out, I expect to be fully reinstated. And then there will be a reckoning for those who have damaged the reputation of good officers and undermined public safety in our community." The thinly veiled threat hung in the air as the broadcast cut back to the studio anchors, who looked visibly uncomfortable. "The Attorney General has called an emergency press conference for this afternoon," Thaddeus informed Maya. "She wants you there, along with the other complainants in Santos. It's time to present a united front against these intimidation tactics." As Maya gathered her belongings, she clipped her Bodycam to her blouse, a habit that had become second nature. The small device that had begun as personal protection had transformed into something far more powerful, a tool for accountability, a voice for the voiceless, and a beacon of truth in a system built on silence and intimidation. Whatever Walsh and his supporters might try next, the evidence was secure and the truth was finally emerging. For the first time since this ordeal began, Maya allowed herself to believe that real change might actually be possible. The Attorney General's office was surrounded by media vans and protesters when Maya arrived with Thaddeus. Two distinct groups had formed on opposite sides of the street, one supporting the suspended officers with "Back the Blue" signs, the other demanding justice with placards reading "Accountability Now" and "Bodycams Don't Lie." State troopers maintained a careful perimeter between the groups as Maya, Layla, Shanice, Vanessa, and Marcus were escorted through a side entrance. Inside, they found Officer Santos already waiting, looking uncomfortable in civilian clothes. "They're calling me a traitor," he said quietly as they gathered in a conference room adjacent to the press briefing area. "My own colleagues, people I worked with for years." "You did the right thing," Maya assured him. "That takes more courage than staying silent." Attorney General Rivera entered, accompanied by two Assistant Attorneys General and Chief Michael Reynolds from Riverview. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "Before we address the media, I want to update you on where things stand." She laid out the rapidly developing situation. The state investigation had expanded to include 12 officers from Crestwood PD, focusing on a pattern of discriminatory policing. Simmons remained in custody, now facing potential charges related to both the current complaints and the reopened Darius Taylor case. Walsh and Peterson were under investigation for obstruction of justice, witness intimidation, and possible conspiracy charges. "What about Walsh's claims that our evidence was manipulated?" Maya asked. "Pure desperation," Rivera replied. "Our technical experts have verified the authenticity of all your recordings. The metadata is intact, the chain of custody is clear, and the timestamps match dispatch logs. His accusations won't stand up to scrutiny." She outlined their approach for the press conference. She would present the preliminary findings of the state investigation, announce the formal charges against Simmons, and detail the expanded investigation into departmental misconduct. Then Maya and the others would have an opportunity to make brief statements about their experiences. "Keep your comments focused on facts," Rivera advised. "Don't let emotion or anger drive your words, no matter how justified those feelings might be. Walsh is hoping to paint you as vindictive or politically motivated. Don't give him that ammunition." As they prepared to enter the briefing room, Maya felt a sudden wave of anxiety. Until now, she had been fighting from the shadows, filing complaints, gathering evidence, working through proper channels. Today, she would step into the public spotlight, putting a face to the accusations that had divided Crestwood. The press room was packed with reporters from local and national outlets. Cameras flashed as they took their seats behind a long table with microphones. Attorney General Rivera opened the conference with a clear, authoritative statement about the investigation's status. Based on substantial evidence, including authenticated video recordings, witness testimonies, and internal department records, we have found credible cause to believe that Officer Reed Simmons engaged in a pattern of discriminatory policing targeting minority residents of Crestwood County. She continued methodically, outlining how the investigation had expanded to include Walsh, Peterson, and other officers. Furthermore, we have uncovered evidence suggesting a systematic effort within department leadership to conceal misconduct, intimidate complainants, and obstruct proper oversight procedures. Maya watched the reporters' faces as Rivera announced the formal charges against Simmons: 6 counts of civil rights violations, falsification of police reports, and a reopened investigation into his role in the death of Darius Taylor. Now, I'd like to introduce the individuals whose courage made this investigation possible, Rivera said, turning toward Maya and the others. Ms. Maya Johnson will speak first. Maya approached the microphone, acutely conscious of the cameras recording her every expression. Her prepared statement lay before her, but as she began to speak, she found herself setting it aside. 6 months ago, I bought a body camera because I was afraid, she began, her voice steadier than she expected. As a black woman in Crestwood County, I had been stopped repeatedly by Officer Simmons for alleged violations that never resulted in citations. Each stop followed the same pattern: increasingly aggressive questioning, baseless accusations, and thinly veiled threats. She described how her complaints had been dismissed, how the system had protected Simmons rather than addressing her concerns. I started recording these encounters not to target police, but to protect myself when official channels failed. What my camera captured wasn't just one officer's misconduct, but evidence of a broader culture that enabled and protected that behavior. Maya glanced toward the other complainants before continuing. I'm not alone. Every person seated here has a similar story. We aren't anti-police. We're pro-accountability. No one, especially those entrusted with authority and weapons, should be above the law they're sworn to uphold. As she stepped back, the other complainants offered their own testimonies, Layla describing how her teenage son now feared driving anywhere in Crestwood, Shanice explaining the terror of being subjected to a roadside sobriety test while 8 months pregnant, Marcus recounting how his medical career had been jeopardized by baseless arrests. Officer Santos spoke last, his voice tight with emotion. I became a police officer to serve my community with honor. What I witnessed at Crestwood PD betrayed that ideal. Good policing requires trust, accountability, and transparency. Without those foundations, we cannot effectively protect and serve. The question period that followed was intense. Reporters pressed for details about the recordings, the Taylor case, and the department's response. Throughout, Maya and the others maintained the factual, measured tone Rivera had advised, refusing to be baited into inflammatory statements despite increasingly provocative questions. As the conference concluded, Rivera made a final announcement. In light of these findings, I'm recommending a complete overhaul of Crestwood Police Department's leadership structure, training procedures, and oversight mechanisms. Additionally, we'll be reviewing all arrests and citations issued by the officers under investigation for potential civil rights violations. Outside, the competing protest groups had grown larger and more vocal. Maya and the others were escorted to a secure parking area, but not before they glimpsed the charged atmosphere their testimony had intensified. Signs supporting them now mingled with others calling them liars and troublemakers. This is just the beginning, Thaddeus warned as they gathered beside their vehicles. The department's supporters will push back hard. Expect character assassination attempts, intimidation, maybe worse. Maya nodded, already seeing social media notifications flooding her phone, some supportive, others hateful and threatening. What matters is that the truth is finally coming out. The evidence speaks for itself. Later that evening, as Maya settled into her temporary apartment, her own still being repaired after the break-in. Breaking news alerts lit up her phone. Captain Walsh had been arrested attempting to cross the state line with packed luggage and a significant amount of cash. "He was running," Layla texted in their group chat. "If that's not an admission of guilt, I don't know what is." The following morning brought another development. An anonymous source had provided media outlets with internal emails showing Walsh and several county officials discussing how to manage the problem of civilian complaints against certain officers. The correspondence revealed a systematic effort to discourage, dismiss, and discredit anyone who filed reports against Simmons or his colleagues. "The dam is breaking," Thaddeus told Maya during their morning check-in call. "People who were afraid to speak up before are coming forward now that they see action being taken." Indeed, the Attorney General's office had established a dedicated hotline for reporting police misconduct in Crestwood, and it was receiving dozens of calls daily. Each new account reinforced the pattern Maya's Bodycam had first exposed. As Maya prepared for her first shift back at Memorial Hospital, she was surprised to find Dr. Patel waiting with a small gathering of colleagues in the staff lounge. A cake sat on the break room table with "Our Hero" written in blue icing. "We're proud of you, Maya," Dr. Patel said, embracing her. "What you did took extraordinary courage." Overwhelmed, Maya could only nod her thanks, emotion tightening her throat. As her colleagues offered their support, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Expecting another threat, she was startled to read, "Officer Peterson in custody, turned himself in, offering to testify against Walsh re. Taylor case cover-up. Your footage broke the blue wall. Santos." Maya took a deep breath, steadying herself against the rush of vindication. The small camera that had started as her protection had become a catalyst for change that none of them could have anticipated. Whatever challenges still lay ahead, the truth was finally emerging. Recorded, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. 3 months after the Attorney General's press conference, Maya stood in the back of the crowded courtroom, watching as Officer Reed Simmons was led away in handcuffs. The jury had deliberated for less than 5 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts: civil rights violations, falsification of police reports, and obstruction of justice. Beside Maya, Lydia Taylor quietly wept, her shoulders shaking with the release of a decade's worth of grief and anger. The separate trial for Simmons's role in Darius Taylor's death was still pending, but today's verdict was a crucial first step toward justice for her son. "Thank you," Lydia whispered, gripping Maya's hand. "Without you, none of this would have happened." Maya squeezed back gently. "It was your persistence that kept Darius's case alive all these years. You never stopped fighting for him." As they exited the courthouse, they found the steps lined with community members holding candles despite the bright afternoon sun, a vigil organized by local activists to honor Darius Taylor and all those who had suffered under Crestwood's corrupted policing. The past 3 months had brought wave after wave of revelations. Captain Walsh, facing multiple felony charges, had accepted a plea deal in exchange for testimony against county officials who had helped conceal departmental misconduct. Officer Peterson had provided state investigators with detailed accounts of the enforcement squad's targeting practices, including a spreadsheet officers had used to track minority drivers on certain routes. 5 other officers had been charged with various offenses ranging from excessive force to falsifying reports. The Crestwood Police Department, once considered untouchable, was now under the supervision of a state-appointed oversight committee, with a new interim chief brought in from outside the county. Thaddeus met Maya and Lydia at the bottom of the courthouse steps, his expression triumphant, but tempered with the knowledge that their work was far from complete. The county commissioner's office just announced a comprehensive settlement for all verified victims of discriminatory policing, he informed them. And they've agreed to implement every reform measure the Oversight Committee recommended: body cameras for all officers, civilian review board with actual authority, mandatory bias training, and complete restructuring of the complaint process. Maya nodded, recognizing these changes as vital, but also understanding they were just the beginning of a longer journey toward true accountability. What about the FOIA lawsuit for the complete records? Federal judge ruled in our favor this morning, Thaddeus replied. The department has 30 days to produce unredacted records of all stops, searches, and arrests conducted by the officers under investigation for the past 5 years. Later that evening, Maya joined Layla, Shanice, Vanessa, Marcus, and a dozen other community members who had come forward with their own experiences of harassment at a celebration dinner organized by the newly formed Crestwood Accountability Project. Officer Santos was there too, now working with the Oversight Committee to implement reforms within the department. I never thought I'd see this day, Layla admitted, raising her glass in a toast. When I filed my first complaint 3 years ago, they literally laughed me out of the building. They're not laughing now, Vanessa observed, a hint of justified satisfaction in her voice. Maya looked around the table at these people who had become more than allies. They were a community forged through shared struggle and collective courage. Each had risked something to stand up for justice. Jobs threatened, reputations attacked, safety compromised. Yet they had persisted, supported one another, and ultimately prevailed. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by moments of laughter and occasional tears as they shared stories of both hardship and hope. Plans were made for community forums, educational outreach, and continued monitoring of police practices. What had begun as individual complaints had evolved into a movement for lasting change. As the evening wound down, Maya stepped outside for a moment of quiet reflection. The stars were bright overhead, the spring air carrying the scent of blooming magnolias. 3 police cars drove past the restaurant in a slow patrol, their newly installed body cameras visibly mounted on the officers' uniforms, a small but significant symbol of the accountability they had fought so hard to establish. Officer Santos joined her on the sidewalk, his expression thoughtful. You know, when I first joined the force, I believed the body cameras were meant to protect us from false accusations. It took me too long to realize they're equally important for protecting the public from us. Maya nodded. They're only effective if the footage can't be erased or ignored. Technology alone doesn't create accountability. It takes people willing to act on what the cameras reveal. You changed this town, Santos said simply. Not just you, but all of you together. You showed people they don't have to accept injustice as normal. The following morning, Maya returned to work at Memorial Hospital, where her schedule had finally stabilized after months of disruption. Her colleagues had been unfailingly supportive, covering shifts when she needed to attend hearings or meet with investigators, checking in on her safety during the most intense periods of backlash. Dr. Patel caught up with her in the hallway between patients. "Have you seen today's paper?" he asked, handing her the front page of the Crestwood Gazette. The headline read, "Justice Department launches investigation into police practices in 3 neighboring counties." The article detailed how the Crestwood case had prompted federal authorities to examine whether similar patterns of misconduct existed in surrounding jurisdictions. "It's spreading," Dr. Patel noted. "What started here is creating ripples throughout the region." Maya thought of all the communities like Crestwood, where residents had learned to accept harassment as an unavoidable reality of their lives, particularly for people of color. How many other Officer Simmons were out there, operating with impunity? How many other Captain Walshes were protecting them? 1 week later, Maya stood on the podium at Crestwood Community College, addressing a packed auditorium of students, activists, and concerned citizens. The forum, titled Accountability in Policing, had been organized by the Political Science Department as part of a new civic engagement initiative. "Change begins with evidence," Maya told the audience, holding up her body cam, the same model she had purchased 6 months earlier, though her original was still secured as evidence in multiple pending cases. When I first bought this camera, I wasn't trying to reform the system. I was just trying to protect myself from it. She described how that small act of self-preservation had unexpectedly become a catalyst for systemic change. I discovered that the most powerful weapon against injustice is irrefutable truth. When they couldn't dismiss or explain away what my camera had captured, they had to face the reality of what was happening in our community. After the forum, a young woman approached Maya, her expression a mixture of admiration and uncertainty. "I've been stopped 3 times in the past month," she confided. "Always the same officer, always with no citation. I'm afraid to file a complaint." Maya recognized her younger self in the woman's hesitation. The fear, the doubt, the sense of powerlessness against a system designed to dismiss her concerns. She reached into her bag and handed the woman a business card for the accountability project. "You're not alone," Maya assured her, "and you deserve to be heard. We can help you document everything properly and navigate the process." That evening, Maya drove home along the same county road where Officer Simmons had first pulled her over. The route no longer filled her with dread. Instead, she felt a quiet sense of reclamation. These roads belonged to the community, not to those who would abuse their authority to create zones of fear and intimidation. As she pulled into her driveway, Maya noticed a package on her front step. Inside was a framed newspaper article about the Simmons verdict, accompanied by a handwritten note from Lydia Taylor. "Because of you, my son's name will be associated with justice, not just tragedy. Thank you for being brave enough to make them see the truth." Maya placed the frame on her mantle, a reminder of the journey that had transformed her from a solitary nurse trying to protect herself into part of a movement that had changed an entire community. The Bodycam that had once been her only defense against harassment now sat in a drawer, still used occasionally but no longer essential for her daily safety. The true power, she had learned, hadn't been in the device itself, but in the community that rallied around the truth it revealed. People willing to stand together, to demand better, to insist that those entrusted with authority must be held accountable for how they wielded it. Outside her window, a patrol car drove slowly past her house. Not in intimidation as it once might have been, but as part of the regular community policing pattern the new interim chief had implemented. The officer inside gave a respectful nod as they made eye contact, the body camera on their uniform clearly visible. Maya returned the gesture, recognizing that true change would require ongoing vigilance, advocacy, and engagement from everyone in Crestwood. The work wasn't finished. It had only just begun. But for the first time in years, she drove through her community without fear, walked its streets without anxiety, and knew that her voice, and the voices of all those who had stood beside her, had finally, irrefutably, been heard.